Mother Knows Death, starring Nicole and Jemmy and Maria QK.
Hi everyone, welcome to Mother Knows Death. On today's episode, we will be talking about health updates from celebrities like Teddi Mellencamp and Wendy Williams, horrific deaths involving homemade limoncello, and of course, a tragedy that occurred at a birthing center, and more. So let's get started with the celebrity news.
All right, let's start off with Teddi Mellencamp. So yesterday, she kind of shocked all of her Instagram followers because she posted that she had been suffering from these severe headaches for the last couple of months, and it was so bad that she required hospitalization on Tuesday, and when they did scans, they found tumors on her brain.
I hate to say this, but this is really not good news for her.
No, especially
it's really bad.
She's been having issues with melanoma for the last couple years that she's been really vocal about, and it just doesn't seem good.
So she's had a bunch of surgeries, at least 16 surgeries over the past couple years to remove all this melanoma from her, which is just, you would think that it's kind of shocking because she's only 43 years old. But I mean, Khloe Kardashian was diagnosed with melanoma too. You see it in young people. Sometimes you see it in teenagers. It's really scary. But in the world of pathology, this is a general rule. When you see one tumor in an organ, most of the time that could be a primary cancer that originated in that organ. So if you got a scan done and saw that you had one tumor in your lung, it's more than likely tumor that originated from your lung as opposed to spreading from another site. But when you do a scan and you see multiple tumors in one organ, that usually indicates that it's a metastasis. Now, that rule is not set in stone. There are times when different things present in different ways, but for the most part, multiple tumors in the brain are representative of a metastasis, which means that the melanoma has spread to her brain.
I mean, this must just be really scary for her because it looks like she had to shave all of her hair off yesterday to get this, which is obviously like the least of her problems at this point. But last night she had to go into emergency surgery to get a couple of the tumors removed, and she said the others are going to be treated with radiation.
So one of the reasons that they are removing the tumors is because they need to get an official diagnosis of what it is, because even though, like I just said, multiple tumors usually are representative of metastasis, you can't just assume that by looking at the scans. So you actually have to look at the tissue under the microscope. And in this case, they'll take one of the tumors out or a piece of one of the tumors out, and they'll send it to pathology, and they'll get the diagnosis to see if it is a primary, because she didn't say it was cancer, but a primary tumor of the brain versus a metastasis. Now, one of the things that is a little weird to me is that she said she's been having these debilitating headaches for months. I don't know how often she's getting checked, but I would think that a person that has a history of cancer that's having headaches, this would be a red flag to any physician. So I'm not sure if she just hasn't been to the doctor in a while and was just dealing with it on her own until it got to the point where she could no longer deal with it, because they said it looked like it was there for a couple months at least.
Well, so she's actually been in quite a scandalous situation in the last couple of months. She just was exposed for having this affair with her child's horse trainer, and it's been all over the news, and she's filed for divorce from her husband. So I'm wondering if possibly she confused the headaches for all the stress she's been under lately and just really didn't think further into it. I know that's like ignorant to say, but she's had a lot going on in her life.
It's kind of outrageous to me to think that you're that age and you're married and have children and you have a really, I mean, melanoma is not a joke cancer diagnosis. It's a very deadly cancer. To just think that your brain would even be anywhere near wanting to cheat on your husband, it's a little bizarre to me, but these are Hollywood people, I guess.
Well, and there was scandal because the horse trainer's wife was apparently pregnant or had just given birth at the time their affair was exposed and all this other stuff. So I'm not saying that's an excuse to ignore medical symptoms, but I know from pop culture news that she had been going through a lot more than she normally had been in the last couple of months. So I'm wondering if all of that caused her to just confuse the symptoms she was having with undergoing severe stress from filing for divorce and having this scandal go publicly on all the newspapers and everything and tabloids and featured on every single pop culture podcast. So that's all I could think of.
I hate to say this, but when you have metastasis from melanoma, it's usually not good. The survival rate after 5 years with this diagnosis is not very high at all. So, I mean, obviously she's got money and the best doctors hopefully at her fingertips to help her get through this, but I'm not sure that they're going to be able to help her.
Yeah, I'm curious. It seems like she just got surgery last night, so I'm curious what they're going to come out and say. I mean, obviously it's really nobody's business what her formal diagnosis is, but she's putting all of this out
no,
on the
it is.
internet,
It's our business because she's putting it out there, so she needs to finish up. Don't pull a Kourtney Kardashian and give us half the story. Like, either tell us or don't tell us. That's my opinion on it.
I will say I was surprised when she showed the room of people at the hospital there to support her and saw that her husband, who she just cheated on, was in the room. And obviously that's the mother of his children, and they were together a really long time. And you want to be there for somebody in a horrible time.
He's a good person, because it's very easy if someone cheats on you to be like, F you did this to me. But I mean, now this is a serious diagnosis. If it turns out that she does have metastatic melanoma, I mean, this is going to be life-changing for his involvement with his children. He might be a full-time parent soon without her help. The children won't have a mom. Like, this is a big deal. So, I mean, he's a good person.
I thought she had a pretty good... I don't know if you watched her Instagram stories, but I thought she had a pretty good attitude about it. Like, she was laughing about her new look with her shaved head and then these weird, like, monitors they had on her forehead and trying to joke. I mean, that's all you could do in that situation, because it's horrible, and sometimes it just makes the situation a little easier to digest when you're going through something that's scary.
Yeah, I mean, I just hope that it ends up being some benign thing, but I mean, just from what I know, the chances of that are not great.
Yeah, well, let's get into Wendy Williams. So she's been in the news a lot recently. Back in 2022, a court had ordered Wendy to be in this legal guardianship via this lawyer, Sabrina Morrissey. I don't know how familiar you are with this, but there was this really weird thing where her financial advisor at Wells Fargo had somehow contacted a court and requested a guardianship because they said her behavior was kind of all over the place, and they put a freeze on her bank accounts, which seemed really odd that a bank could do that, don't you think?
Like she was spending too much money or something?
I guess in their this is not clear, because there was a lot of controversy about this, because they're like, okay, so if your bank just thinks you're acting weird, they could just put a hold on your account and contact the court?
I think just what happened to Ricky the other day, that he had some weird charge on his credit card and Wells Fargo called him right away and was like, are you trying to make this purchase? Maybe it started off like that. I mean, you're talking about, we're normal people that have normal amounts of cash in the bank. You're talking about people that have millions of dollars in accounts and stuff, and they probably have a higher level of staff monitoring the activity on these types of accounts, and may have noticed that there was some kind of a trigger that, okay, Wendy Williams was spending $60,000 a month, and all of a sudden it went up to $200,000 a month, and like, what's happened? Did something triggered in the system? And maybe that's when they brought it to someone's attention, and it went from there, kind of. I'm not sure that the bank employee would be able to make a diagnosis of what was wrong with her and get a guardianship put on her, but maybe the initial events were triggered by something like that.
So this is another thing I'm confused about. So just the other night, I was watching the show called The Curious Case Of, and they were talking about Bam Margera and like what's going on with him, and his family tried to put him in this, I guess, conservatorship or guardianship, and there's, confusion that those are interchangeable terms. Beth Karras, the legal expert? Yeah. So I'm kind of obsessed with her on this show. She's like really amazing. She's like my new Nancy. I'm like really into everything she has to say on the show. But she was explaining that there is a difference, and on the show she said a guardian has control of a person's medical care and living arrangements, while a conservator just has financial control. So I guess in this case in New York, they have control of Wendy Williams' finances in addition to her medical care and living arrangements. So after she was issued this legal guardianship, they put her in this like the senior care facility that she's been living in downtown, and this really sad video surfaced of her talking on the phone in her window, and she says it's like living in a prison.
Well, this is what I'm not 100% certain what's going on with this story, but it seems as if she was diagnosed. We talked about this. It was probably almost a year ago, honestly, that we talked about this, that she was diagnosed with frontal temporal dementia and alcohol-induced cognitive impairment, okay? So they came up with this diagnosis that she drank so much that she essentially damaged her brain permanently and was never going to be able to function normally again. And this could be part of the problem because now that she's sobered up, and maybe that was a misdiagnosis. And
Well-
maybe it was temporary issues that she was having. And I mean, listen, this woman is on the phone with a TMZ reporter, right? And she's standing at the window of this building while the TMZ reporter is down on the ground recording her, and she's crying and saying that she's not allowed out and she's trapped in there. She seems pretty aware of what the hell's going on.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I listened to clips of the audio from this interview, and she seems 100% coherent and knows exactly what's happening.
Yeah, so I don't know like what's going on with her diagnosis. And I mean, we saw videos of her last year and she looked crazy. Like her eyes were huge and she was talking nonsense, but apparently she's sobered up over the past year and it seems like she might be getting better. And I don't know how that works. If you're under one of these medical guardianships, how often do they reevaluate to make sure that you still fall within the terms? Because maybe she really did need that at the time, but now she might not need that. So they need to reevaluate it and see if that is really necessary at this point.
So this really reminds me of Britney Spears and what happened with her, because I think now that we're so removed from Britney Spears being put in the conservatorship, I think it seemed like in her case that she was maybe going through a really tough round of like postpartum depression or something, and everybody around her just really was not sympathetic and just blew her off as being crazy, which was driving her further into the hole. And I think something similar like this is happening with Wendy Williams. I mean, she was this immensely famous person. She, in her younger days, had struggles. She had so many miscarriages. She essentially had this miracle baby, her son. Then her husband was having an affair with her, had a daughter with somebody else. All she wanted her whole life was a daughter. And then you find out your husband of so many years had a daughter with another woman behind your back. So I think that then, her health wasn't great. She passed out on live television.
She has Graves' disease, which is an autoimmune disease of the thyroid. And that's another thing, too, because if your thyroid hormones are out of whack, that could cause erratic behavior, too. It causes you to get really hot. You can't sleep. You have anxiety, weight loss. And talking about her eyes looking a little outrageous, it causes inflammation of the tissues surrounding the eyes. So it gives the appearance of your eyes bulging out. So it's not really that she was literally crazy and going nuts. It just, her eyes just looked a little alarming, but it's because of the Graves' disease. So that's another thing to take into consideration as well.
Yeah, I guess the point of what I'm getting at is, I think even though these people are rich and famous and they have money, they're also people, and there's only so much stress you can handle. So I can see that maybe she was having a bit of a breakdown, but it doesn't mean that you can just shove her in an assisted living facility the rest of her life. I mean, she clearly seems like at this point she got the help she needed, and now her lawyers are trying to get her out of this guardianship. She's going to be reevaluated next week by a doctor, and they're going to try to push it through to court and see if they could get her free.
Yeah, they need to intervene way faster than they did with Britney. Britney's, I mean, we should just have a whole episode about that one day. It's just really incredibly sad what happened with Britney. And I mean, just being a person that's gone through postpartum and just all of the hormones and the emotions and everything after that, and just imagine being Britney Spears and people telling you you're fat when you're barely fat, and just like the whole entire thing of it just makes complete sense why she freaked out so bad, you know?
This episode is brought to you by The Gross Room.
Guys, this week in the Gross Room, we are having some really outrageous cases that I came across, so you have to look forward to that. Next week, we're going to focus, since it's President's Day, we're going to focus a little bit on all of the presidents that we've talked about in the Gross Room over the years, including George Washington and his unusual death, and Abraham Lincoln, and go through the forensics of that case. So it's going to be a really cool, high-profile death dissection, or I guess you would say celebrity death dissection for the presidents. But yeah, we're going to be doing that this week, so make sure you check it out.
Yeah, head over to thegrossroom.com for more info and to sign up for only $5.99 for the month.
Okay, so let's get into this true crime story.
So after Christmas, this couple was on vacation in Vietnam. They went to a local bar. So at the bar, they're served limoncello by the bartender. They go on their way, and later they're found dead in their hotel room.
So back in 2022, I wrote a high-profile death dissection on poisoning, methanol poisoning in particular, because they had discovered after they did the autopsies on this couple that they died from methanol poisoning from having this homemade limoncello at a Vietnamese bar. So back in 2002, the reason that I wrote this high-profile death dissection on methanol poisoning was because in East London, South Africa, 21 teenagers died, ranging from 13 to 17 years old. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
They all died at that bar, and they were being served alcohol underage. And so one of the things is that, especially when you're traveling, it's something to keep in mind, because this has happened more than once. This is not the first time of this happening. The alcohol that we drink at a bar when you get vodka or anything like that is called ethanol. And ethanol is considered toxic to humans too, but they've deemed it safe if you have small amounts. It's safe to consume in small amounts. Methanol, on the other hand, is a type of alcohol that they serve at Home Depot. They sell it for construction workers, mechanics, and things like that to use it, painters. But it's toxic to humans, and it's never deemed safe in any amount. So something as small as 1 to 8 ounces of it could kill you. It's just very, very deadly. Now, the reason that people use methanol, this person that was making the homemade limoncello probably, is because methanol is significantly cheaper than ethanol is. So, for example, you can get a 5-gallon container jug of methanol for about $40. And if you look at something like one of the cheapest vodkas, like Vladimir vodka or something,
that is
right?
The grossest vodka of all
It's gross,
time.
but I'm saying like the legal ethanol, right? It's cheap, it's gross. Like most people don't go for that one unless you're like 17 and making Jello shots or something, right? But a 1.75 liter bottle of that is $10, which is cheap for that much vodka, right? But if you kind of put that into gallons, 5 gallons of Vladimir's vodka, that would cost $180. So the cheapest ethanol is that expensive compared to methanol that's $40. So people who don't really know, they just say, oh, it's alcohol, that are making drinks like this to try to stretch their product or whatever they're trying to do. They poison people by accident because they don't really understand that methanol is not the same as ethanol, and it's very, very toxic. So you hear about these deaths from time to time, and it involves people on vacation a lot, and it's really, really scary, honestly.
It does seem to happen a lot in vacation touristy areas abroad, which is really unusual. And I don't know if they're just trying, like the main motivation has to just be to save money, because it doesn't seem like in any of these cases we cover that they're trying to poison a bunch of people.
No, it does. They absolutely aren't. It's just, it could be something as simple as like, oh, we don't have any vodka, so I have this other thing sitting here. I'll just use it. It's the same thing. They're both alcohol. I mean, it's really scary, to be honest with you, but you hear about this sometimes in other countries when people go and visit, that they actually will, let's say you have a liter of vodka and then you make a couple shots and then you just fill the rest of the bottle up with methanol just to kind of thin out the product. Because when you're drinking it, you won't really notice a difference. I mean, because technically when you drink alcohol, you are just kind of poisoning yourself just enough to feel a little woozy before you die, right? And you could die from ethanol too, trust me. But you could have permanent visual damage in just drinking an ounce of it, which an ounce is not very much fluid. If you think about a can of soda is 12 ounces, right? But then you start with vomiting, abdominal pain, and then you could have central nervous system depression, and then eventually death, which happened to this couple, which is terrible.
I mean, when I was bartending, we weren't even allowed to combine bottles of the same alcohol, which is like crazy that people can just.
I mean, it's just better to have that rule.
No, and it's there for a reason, because clearly something happened. They weren't just like, let's just be smart and get ahead of this.
So you're saying if you had a bottle of what's a good vodka? I don't even.
If I had 2 half-empty bottles of like Kettle One or Tito's, and I only had room really for one of them on the shelf, you cannot take one of them and pour it into the other, at least in Pennsylvania. I don't know about elsewhere, but I guess there's concerns with if there's a problem.
But there were 2 brands?
No, I'm saying like if you have 2 half-empty bottles of Kettle One. I was just giving 2 brands as an example. If you have 2 half bottles of Kettle One, for example, you can't combine the bottles because in Pennsylvania is what I'm getting at, because I don't know about the laws in other states. But if I'm assuming that's in place, because if there's a problem with one of the bottles, you want to look at the lot number, see where it came from, everything like that. Whereas if you're pouring them into each other, and you also can't pour it out of the bottle and pour it back in. Like once it's out, it's out.
Well, listen, it makes sense because this is how you could have mistakes. If you just have a general rule that it's like you can't pour anything into a bottle, there's no way of, because what if you poured the Kettle One out, for example, and then by accident you poured it back into scotch or whatever it is. I mean, that's also would be false advertising to be selling the more expensive vodka to somebody, things like that, or mixing alcohols, and people might be allergic to whatever's in vodka but not scotch, or you know what I mean? And it's just better to have the rule.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because it could easily, scotch, it would, I know you're trying to use an example. Scotch, it wouldn't happen because scotch is brown. It could easily happen with gin or tequila or something like that. You have the allergy reason. You just have false advertising. Certain alcohols are worth different amount of money. I mean, there's a million problems that could happen. And when I say you can't do it, it doesn't mean that people don't do it. Because I definitely see really shitty dive bars where people are 100% doing stuff like that.
Yeah,
but
it's just really scary to think that you're drinking something at a store or something, or at a restaurant, and you're just trusting what you're getting is what they're telling you it is. And there's probably been many times that you or I have ingested food or drink that we're not 100% sure. Did that fall on the floor? Is that really the vodka I ordered? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. That's just the thought I have. It's scary because ingesting something is a vulnerability that you give up to people when you go out.
Well, didn't Lisa Perrin say this in her book? Something along, I'm paraphrasing, but it was something along the lines of we're like always one step away from being poisoned, in a sense. Like it's just a difference of dosage.
It's really true. I mean, it's like scary. It's really terrifying if you think about it, really.
No, it is.
Okay, medical news.
This one is horrible. In Arizona, this woman went into labor. She was planning to have her baby at a birthing center. So at 42 weeks, she goes to this birthing center and she told the midwives that she was in a lot of pain and that she wanted to go to the hospital. They kept blowing her off, telling her that she was overreacting because it was her first kid, even though her and her husband kept pushing.
Listen, I honestly, that part of it, I just completely understand, because I don't think that a person that's in labor for the first time, especially at a birthing center with no drugs, realizes quite how bad it hurts. And when you say you're in a lot of pain, like, no shit, like she didn't understand that she was in a lot of pain because it was the first time she was having a baby. It's not like
Well, this wasn't
it's
the
not
this
like
wasn't
you're
the
going.
only problem.
No, obviously there was other problems, but the pain part of it and getting blown off because she was in pain is not a problem to me because every single person, that's a known, right?
Well, after 30 hours in labor, which is so long, they finally realize she's having trouble breathing. They call emergency workers. They take her to the hospital, and she had to have an emergency C-section there, and then the baby didn't make it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how I feel about these birthing centers because I know a lot of people have great experience with them. I personally say if I ever if I had another kid, I probably would have just had it at home or squatted by a tree because I would have had better treatment than I had at the actual hospital. So, I mean, that's my personal experience. Everybody's got a bad experience. And listen, like, unfortunately, babies die, whether it's in a birthing center or at the hospital, because I used to work at a hospital and did plenty of autopsies of these same exact similar situations where the person was in the hospital. So I don't want to necessarily give these birthing centers like a bad name because of this, because this happens all the time. And I don't really know what the circumstances are around it because I didn't get to read all of the notes and what happened and what was the cause of death. But I do know that there were midwives there who, for those of you who don't know, midwives could be, they're healthcare professionals, and there's all different kinds of levels of what they could do. But they're a person that's trained to take care of OB/GYN patients. So it's more of a holistic approach to taking care of a mother, especially that's getting ready to give birth and having a more comfortable environment, not so clinical in the hospital. There's usually not drugs associated with these births. And, you know, when you're in all this pain, they're supposed to be there to help you get through it and to calm you down and all that stuff. And I mean, honestly, I gave birth naturally. And although it definitely did suck really, really bad as far as the pain goes, the second the kid comes out, there's this euphoria that comes over you and you just feel like you just took the biggest Xanax of your life and you're just chill. It doesn't hurt anymore. And I got up and was like, I have to go to the bathroom. And I went to the bathroom within 10 minutes of giving birth. And sometimes when you get all these drugs and you get an epidural and stuff, you can't walk around, and it just takes longer to recover afterwards like that. So I am a fan of having birth naturally, and these midwives help millions of women a year get through this. But
Well, I don't think the problem is with the birthing center in general. I think the problem was they did an investigation at this particular place and they found the midwives there were not necessarily following a good protocol.
Yeah, and I don't know what the level of them was. So a midwife usually isn't a doctor. They usually work along with an OB/GYN, but some of them can be nurses with a master's level. They could even have doctorates, actually. So I don't know if it was a highly trained nurse midwife or just person that was just another kind of healthcare professional doing it. I don't know what the deal is. But yeah, when they did an investigation over the court, because this happened a year ago, that they discovered that they weren't taking the fetal vitals often enough as they should, and they weren't taking the mother's vitals as well, like her blood pressure and things like that. I think they said they were supposed to do it every 15 minutes or whatever it was, and they weren't following the protocol with that. So, I mean, this could have, like I said, I don't really know what the pathology involved was, but this could have been really bad, and they could have lost her as well.
Yeah, so they said one of the midwives was fined $9,000, but if she paid that fine within 10 days, she only had to pay $200 of the $9,000, which I think is just further pissing people off. But
I wonder though, how do you know if you're that place seems like it's still open, right? And you don't know about this story. So say you're a person that's looking into doing this. How do you find out that there was this event there?
Well, I guess because this happened in late 2023, so I want to say they filed the complaint against them pretty shortly after, and I think if you just Google the name of the facility, it's going to come up.
I don't know too much about the whole OB/GYN situation. I actually have a friend that I should have texted prior to this, but I'm pretty sure that she's saying she was 42 weeks. I'm pretty sure that they don't want you going that much further over your due date because of the increased risk of complications. So that was kind of striking to me in the beginning that they did that, but that might not be a thing. That's just something that I've personally experienced. Like if I was due and didn't have because I went over with you and with my two other daughters, and every time it was just like your due date happens, and if that baby doesn't come by 41 weeks, like you're scheduled to come in that day. And I was always told that it was because there was just an increased risk of complications, but maybe I could text my friend and ask her if that's true. Like I said, I mean, you do want to know that this happened, but you can't be naive to think that this just doesn't happen, though.
No, you definitely can't. I think the bottom line is like one of your best friends died at what we consider a really good hospital, right? Due to like a freak thing. So I think in general,
but it wasn't really a freak thing though. It was a handful of negligent things that ended up being that caused her to die. It's not like it was a medical reason. It was just a handful of missed things and not following protocols and things like that caused her to die.
Yeah, so
but it's a terrible thing for anyone, your friends, your family, the people going through it. The whole entire thing is just a terrible thing for all involved to have to go through.
I just think before giving birth, and obviously sometimes you're in like a situation where you just, you have to give birth in a Krispy Kreme parking lot, or like you have
and
to
name your baby Glaze.
Yeah, like, or you just have to, you don't have control. But if you're planning on giving birth at a specific place, it is certainly up to you as the patient to do as much research as possible and look into it before you commit to that. And obviously, like, bad things happen sometimes, but you got to look into the reasons why. And that's what matters the most. So this is just like really sad, and you obviously don't want anybody going through this, but hopefully it just doesn't happen again.
I mean, another thing, unfortunately, is that I've seen with all the autopsies that I've done in situations like that you could just look over it in hindsight and say, they should have done this, this wouldn't have happened. I mean, how terrible is it that you go into the hospital to give birth and your fetus is alive, and then you leave with the baby not coming home with you? It's so unacceptable. And it's the same thing we could talk about though with plane accidents. It's just like you have so many flights every single day, and there's a plane accident, and then everybody gets scared of it. Well, there's millions and millions of babies being born every day, and then when you hear of one death, it scares the shit out of you, but like it's just not that common.
Yeah. All right. We have some church controversy. So the Church of England has ruled that non-alcoholic wine and gluten-free bread cannot be used during Holy Communion anymore.
This is the one story that's going to make me go on a rant about my feelings about the religion, and specifically the Catholic religion. A lot of people ask me all the time, what religion are you? And I just kind of stay out of it. But I'm like, this is the time to speak up about this and why I got so burned by Catholicism. And because I think that there's a lot of hypocrisy in it, and it really drives me nuts, and I don't want to be a part of it. Like this, there's been priests, right, that were molesting children and sent to other churches so they could just skate free and get out of it, and then they were allowed to take communion at their new jobs, right? But you're not letting people who eat gluten or don't eat gluten and don't want to drink alcohol do it. It seems so outrageous. You know what I mean?
Well, it is, because I just think it's bullshit. Because like, if you really want to boil it down, it should be fucking blood of a human and flesh of a human, not a rice cracker and wine, right? So like, it
says it needs to be made of wheat flour, and the wine must be fermented grape juice. I just think, listen, you know how I told you I follow this Orthodox Jew influencer?
Yeah.
I don't know what her name is, but she's awesome, and she answers questions like this. One of the things I love about her religion is that they can just make exceptions for things that are practical in a lot of situations. So, for example, I feel like if you brought this up and said, hey, I know they don't do communion and stuff, but I'm just saying for an example, like if you brought this up, they would say, okay, well, we want everybody to have the wheat flour and the fermented grape juice, but in the exception of a person that's having a health issue, we'll make exceptions for that. It seems like they do that in a lot of situations because they ultimately want people to live their best life and to be healthy while doing it, right? What is the problem? You have children that that have gluten. I mean, it just sounds so ridiculous, and I don't know. I mean, and I have a whole bias because, and this is what I'm going to tell you guys my story. So I was going to Catholic school in 9th grade when I got pregnant with Maria, right? And I got pregnant with her, and they told, and Maria's dad also went to high school with me and was in my grade. They told my mother that I was not allowed to get an abortion because that went against the Catholic Church, but I wasn't allowed to stay in school being pregnant. But Maria's dad was allowed to stay in school. I wasn't. So I got essentially kicked out of school in 9th grade.
He graduated from there.
He graduated from there too, exactly, which is awesome because he had no involvement in it. It was just my problem. So I got kicked out of school. And then when we went to baptize Maria, it was this huge thing. They wouldn't let us baptize her in church because they thought that that would be inappropriate. So we had to go baptize her in the rectory behind closed doors. And that was when my mom was finally like, fuck this religion, I'm over it. Because we used to go to church every week and good members of the church and everything like that. And I think that my mom finally was like, okay, I've had enough here because of the way that we got treated in that situation. And you would think that you have a child that, like, I was 15 years old that had an unfortunate situation fall upon me, that they would be supportive because I was choosing life for my child, which is what they want, right? But not at all, not helping at all. Not, I don't know, the whole thing. I just kind of been like over Catholicism since you basically.
So,
but what?
No, I also find it hypocritical that they find it problematic that a 15-year-old gives birth to a kid, but they got no problem sexualizing children over and over and over again and not punishing the offenders for it. So,
yeah, which is interesting because that was all going down around the same time. So just all of that, and it just whatever. Like if you do it, that's fine. I don't care what religion people are. I'm interested in learning about it. I still love Catholicism for its I love the way churches look, and I love the art, and I love a lot of the history behind it, but at the same time it's just the rules. And this one just triggered me today when I read it, that just it's just like, why are you standing firm on this right now? It's just weird.
I think church is like a really awesome community that I find hard to mimic in other type of environments. You know, you have a set day, everybody goes. Most people, if you go to the same place, know each other. And most people are also really willing to help each other out when you're in need. But, you know, there just is constant hypocrisy. I often find that the most Christian people I know are
they're
the
the worst.
worst human beings
They're the worst
I've ever
human
met in
beings.
my life.
Exactly. It's you're 100% right, and I could give you real world examples of that happening. So.
And that's not everybody, but I'm just saying I have often found that the people that are the most religious are truly terrible people.
Yes.
So
I agree.
no values at all.
So whatever. I didn't want to get into this whole like anti-religion thing. Like, listen, my closest family members go to church every Sunday and they're all up in it. But for me, I was kind of like, yeah, no, I don't really find the need in my life for that. So
I don't have a problem with religion, you know?
It does suck though, because I do like the idea of a community of having, you know, people that you want your children around, that they're all kind of on the same wavelength as far as, well, I mean, they're supposed to be as far as morals and and rules and things like that. I mean, the culture of it and the group of it is a nice thing that I would like, but I just can't do certain aspects of it like that.
No. All right, let's move on to questions of the day. Every Friday on the @MotherKnowsDeath Instagram account, we put up a question box and you guys could ask us whatever you want. First, what are some common mistakes you see on celebrity autopsy reports?
Oh, that's a good one. I see labeling errors, which is because sometimes with the autopsy reports, you also get other reports, toxicology and stuff like that. And there's been times where I see the wrong date of birth, the wrong name, the wrong body site, and things like that, which is a huge problem. But that happens in the real world too. So I guess I'm glad to see it happens with celebrities too. A lot of times too, I don't know if I've ever talked about this, but when we do an autopsy, sometimes people have a template, which is it just basically goes through every single body system and it'll say GI system and then it'll say large bowel, small bowel, appendix, gallbladder. And it has this pre-written stuff in it, which when you go through the autopsy, you should change every single thing on there to fit the autopsy that you just did. So sometimes the standard autopsy, and this is a simple mistake that's done commonly, which is why I'm kind of anti-template. But a common one is it'll say, oh, the appendix is present and it's unremarkable and, you know, there's no pathology seen. But then you learn from the patient that you were examining, they actually had an appendectomy. So imagine your child dies or your husband dies and you get the autopsy report knowing that your husband had his appendix removed and it's saying that his appendix was fine. Well, like, how do you trust the rest of the autopsy report if they got that wrong? Because they should have looked to make sure it was missing. And that's like simple mistakes like that. And a lot of it too is just this thing I talk about all the time with celebrity autopsies is they just don't follow protocol 100% all the time because they're famous and that's how things can get messed up sometimes.
All right, have you ever thought about milling your own wheat to help with gluten intolerance? I was just talking to somebody about this at an engagement party a couple weeks ago, actually. But here's the thing.
How does that help? Because
it's like all organic and you have like full control of the soil and everything like that, I guess.
So you'd have to actually grow it and everything?
Yeah. Here's the thing. I am interested, but like I have a very small property and I just can't see my little tiny backyard growing wheat and then like having any space to process it at all. So probably not for me right now.
I don't think she's saying growing it though. Like milling, like that's getting the grain and doing it yourself.
I guess, but don't you think you're more in control if you're actually growing it yourself and then doing it?
I don't know. I wouldn't do any of it. There's different kinds of flours. I don't have a problem actually with gluten-free at all when I cook. I cook for my entire family gluten-free all the time. The only flour I have in my house is like goldfish crackers and stuff that my kids want sometimes. I don't use it ever in baking, cooking, or anything. And I think my stuff tastes good. I'm making pizza tonight. The last crust I made was banging. The only problem I have with gluten-free stuff is when I go out. It's terrible.
Well,
I mean, at home it's fine, all the flours and everything.
Yeah, when you make your own stuff, it's totally fine, but I agree with you. When you're out, it's horrible. And the things I really think are hard to mimic is donuts and bagels, which
donuts, bagels, and Philly soft pretzels is one that just I want so bad. And
I love that place around here.
It's okay, but it's not. It doesn't have the same consistency, and that's part of the deliciousness of it. And I've never tried to make them myself.
And Annie Ann's pretzel, those are so good. And it's torturous at the mall when you smell them.
Or Cinnabon.
Cinnabon.
Freaking torture, all that.
Yeah, but I will say, I have not tried to make my own bagels or pretzels or anything, but I have made my own gluten-free cinnamon rolls, and you can make those pretty good. And that bakery near us also makes pretty good cinnamon rolls.
Wait,
the one in Oakland.
Oh, yeah, that place is pretty good.
Yeah, that place is really good.
Their hours, not good.
I
Their
will
business
say,
itself, not good. Yeah, that's...
I will say her baked goods are pretty delicious. Like most of the ones.
Yeah,
I would
they
say
are
pretty
good.
much everything
Her
we've had
scones
there.
are good and stuff. You know what? I'm going to ask Lynn to try to make us Philly soft pretzels because she's the ultimate gluten-free baker, but she will never open a business. But it's nice to have a person that's like really good at it and willing to try different things. So I'll ask her.
And she made me the best wedding cake of all time. That was so delicious.
No, remember at your wedding that somebody... So Maria had a cannoli cake for her wedding and somebody... So the way that Lynn is one of our friends and she's also has celiac, so she bakes really amazing things. With a cannoli cake, she had like little cannolis around the bottom of the cake. And before Maria and Ricky cut the cake and did the whole smash in your face thing, someone ate the cannolis off of the cake at the wedding. And we couldn't believe it, and we have no idea who it was. So, of course, who's the first person we thought that did it was
Pop-Up.
Pop-Up. And we go up to him, and we're like, Dad, you didn't, like, pick the cannolis off. You know what I just thought of? It was probably fucking Gabe. That's he does that shit. Like, I'll put something out, and then all of a sudden I see his, like, teeth marks in something that he shouldn't be eating right away because it's, like, not ready yet.
Or like I bring my lunch over
Someone
and
needs
then
to
it won't
fess
be
up
there.
to that because that shit's been bothering me. Like, I'm not mad about it. It's kind of funny in hindsight, but I'm like, who did it? It's like that's like the main attraction is the wedding cake in the center of the pictures.
Well,
it's kind of weird.
There's another story too from my wedding, another mystery where, you know, my dearest Kane cousin Devin Kane said she got in a fight with somebody at the wedding and she has no idea who it was and she is the nicest person in the world.
Wait, what?
She said she was arguing with somebody and I'm like, well, who was it? She
what did
doesn't
they
know.
look like?
She doesn't remember.
What?
So it's this great mystery. Who did Devin yell at the wedding? I still don't know.
I know who it was. I won't say here. I'll tell you off air.
All right, last question. Does Maria do all the graphic designing for the podcast, advertisements, media, etc.? In a way, like our artwork on our website, I did not do. We had a really awesome graphic designer, Amanda, do them. And then the skulls on the banner were done by the chick that made the banners. But I did the podcast cover artwork. Of course, we got professional photos taken, and then I turned it into the cover artwork. And then, yeah, I'll do like when we do ads with CrimeCon and stuff, I do that. I do all your presentations, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's not really exciting. I don't really know how
I do
to
nothing.
draw.
I have no idea how to even whatever she does.
So,
actually, the little girls know how to do more on those programs than I do.
Well, I do have this expensive art degree that I'm not really using elsewhere, so I guess I should use it in some capacity. But,
yes.
You know, I can't really draw, so I can put things together, I think, in a decent way. But it's not the most professional, but it works, so it is what it is. All right, if you guys have a shocking story, please submit it to stories@motherknowsdeath.com or send us a message on Instagram. And please don't forget to leave us a 5-star written review on Apple or Spotify or subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Thank you for listening to Mother Knows Death. As a reminder, my training is as a pathologist assistant. I have a master's level education and specialize in anatomy and pathology education. I am not a doctor and I have not diagnosed or treated anyone, dead or alive, without the assistance of a licensed medical doctor. This show, my website, and social media accounts are designed to educate and inform people based on my experience working in pathology so they can make healthier decisions regarding their life and well-being. Always remember that science is changing every day and the opinions expressed in this episode are based on my knowledge of those subjects at the time of publication. If you are having a medical problem, have a medical question, or are having a medical emergency, please contact your physician or visit an urgent care center, emergency room, or hospital. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Mother Knows Death on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get podcasts. Thanks.